So, welcome everybody. Today I'll be interviewing the SEPM 2022 Honorary Member winner, Leslie Woods, and I am Fredrick Nwasike. I'm a master's student at the Department of Geological Science and Geological Engineering at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And I'm excited about this. I can't wait to get started. I have a couple of very interesting questions for Leslie. And Leslie, how do you feel about this?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, it's nice to meet you. So you probably have about the same amount of snow I do up here in Colorado. We have about a third of a meter of snow today. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh, it's quite
Kind of
it's quite
ridiculous.
sunny over here
Yeah.
though. Sunny over here, so we're kind
Yeah.
of happy we're getting the sun a little bit.
That's
So
nice.
we'll just start up. So Leslie, can you just give us a little summary about your path to geoscience? How did it all start up for you? How did you get interest and how you went on to have such a wonderful career in it?
Yeah. My pathway to geoscience, which I think a lot of people's pathways to geoscience, mine started with my mom and dad.
Oh,
So my dad was an avid outdoorsman, and he really liked to take us hiking and like take us camping in northern Arkansas. And so I grew up actually collecting crinoids and collecting samples and stuff in north. I didn't know what I was looking at, but I thought
oh,
they're
nice.
collecting stuff as we would go hiking, and then we would do backpacking trips up in the Rocky Mountains. And so I saw a lot of rocks and a lot of outdoors. And so it started with that. But then the thing that my father and my mom layered onto it was a sense that I could pretty much be anything I wanted to be. And a geologist at the time was a little unusual in Dardanelle, Arkansas, population 3,000. So, but I went to Arkansas Tech, and I had some really great instructors at Arkansas Tech in Central Arkansas. And they encouraged me to do field work, and they encouraged me to do things outdoors and to do projects and research projects. So I got interested in research. So I went up to the University of Arkansas, and I worked with Doy Zachary and Walt Manger, and Peggy Guccione was up there, and she encouraged me to do a research project in my master's that was completely separate from my master's degree. And that was the very first paper I ever published. It was on the coarse gravels and the Cretaceous gravel systems in the Ouachita Mountains in Arkansas.
Yeah.
So that kind of got my juices flowing to go to the Colorado School of Mines. I'm sorry, I'm at Colorado School of Mines right now, to go to Colorado State and work with Frank Etheridge and Stan Shum. And so after that, I took a job in industry, and I was in industry for 5 years, and that was probably some of the most valuable time I spent, because it taught me what companies were interested in and what companies needed, and what was the value proposition for companies to support academic research, and what types of projects, and what was meaningful and useful. So I then left Amoco, and I went to the University of Texas for 18 and a half years, and I took some of that knowledge that I had and worked at the University of Texas with Bill Fisher and Bill Galloway and Scott Tinker, and I had some really great graduate students there. Lorena Moscadelli was one of my graduate students, and I took that information from industry and that interest in research and turned it into a research consortium that was funded by industry. So that was kind of the start of that. And after 18 and a half years, I decided to I was very engaged with academics and students. And so I decided to take the endowed professorship was offered to me, the Bob Weimer endowed professorship. So I took that, and I've been there for 7 years now, and I really enjoy it. So I think, having that support from my mom and dad, and having that love of the outdoors, and having the opportunity to work with really, really great colleagues and people that always encouraged me and mentored me to do successful things, it was a huge part of just being able to progress to where I'm at today.
That's so nice. It's so interesting to see that you were exposed to geology at a very young age, even if you didn't know what you were doing. And then you
Yeah.
went on to go to the academia, you went to the industry, you had such a wonderful time, like wonderful experience in academia and industry. That's so nice.
Yeah.
I was wondering, what's your most proud moment in your career? What do you think is your most proud moment in your career? What are you most proud of?
Yeah, I think what I'm most proud of in my career are my students.
Oh,
I
nice.
I've graduated about 75 graduate students, and I've had a relatively short career. I didn't
That's a lot.
immediately go
That's a
into
lot.
academics. Yeah, and but it's really gratifying to see them go out and be so successful. I've got some graduate students, some of my earliest graduate students now are leading efforts. Nisha Chatterton is leading the geology and geophysical effort for Exxon, you know, in Guyana and Suriname. And I have students that are more recently graduated, like Sebastian Cardona, who's you know, who's just published his probably 6th paper, you know, and he's really launching off, sort of working in the energy transition environment, where he's looking at carbon and how to sort of sequester carbon at this company that they're interested in sort of building their own carbon sequestration ideas and stuff. Lorena Moscadelli is now at the University of Texas. She leads the Texas State Lands program and so many other programs at the Bureau of Economic Geology. And so I've just had an amazing amount of really good students, and they're very, very successful. And that's probably the thing I'm most proud of.
That's amazing that you're so proud. You have 75 graduate students, and that's so amazing. I'm so happy that you're proud of all of them. That's
Yeah,
nice.
good. I'm
Yeah,
sure your
so,
professors feel the same way, Fredrick. So
oh, yeah. Hopefully, we'll get to know maybe one day when they get to be interviewed like this. We'll see.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, so during from your experience, is that have you experienced any challenge, setback that you think has been valuable, has been a valuable experience for you?
Um, I don't really feel like I've had any major setbacks in my career. I've always had really good mentors, and I've always had really good people that gave me opportunity to sort of move forward and do things. And you know, luckily, I've had good students, and there's never been sort of challenges in terms of them. I think one of the more difficult things that I came into in my career was when I was at the University of Texas. I would teach field camp, and several years into teaching field camp, we had a really bad wreck going out west in West Texas, and so that was very challenging. We actually lost a professor in that wreck. We lost a student in that wreck, and there were a lot of people that were really badly injured. But I think that all of us have had experiences in field efforts, you know, over the years that have really made us relook at our safety issues and teaching people how to drive and teaching people how to be safe. And I know that our programs are stronger for it. So, but other than things like that, which have actually, had growth and strength come out of it, I don't really feel like I've ever had any really bad setbacks. So I've been very
Yeah,
lucky.
that's so nice. So that being said, if you could go back in time, do you think there's anything you would do differently?
Um, I'm ashamed to say that I don't really think there is. I'm sure there's things that I could do better. And I'm sure there's things that I could do differently, but I can't think right now of anything. I've been very blessed really with great colleagues and with great opportunities and great recognition. It's so nice that you can work through, or I think organizations are very, very important.
Uh,
Um, in my own personal success, I always say that my membership in societies and organizations and with other scientists socially, has been really, really important to my own success. And so I think the opportunity to work in those has been really, really helpful and really useful. And so you need colleagues to sort of, and this award is certainly a tribute to my own colleagues who were nice enough to nominate me for this award. And it's just a recognition for people that you're contributing to the society and you're giving your time, and they want to recognize you for that. And so I've been very lucky to have very generous colleagues who've done that. So I can't really say that I would do that much different than what I've done.
oh, that's nice. It's all experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for young professionals who are beginning their career right now? Because there are lots of people who are still young geoscientists who are not certain where they want to be. Some of them are still skeptical if this is the field for them. What advice do you have for them right
I think one piece of advice I have for them is advice that I've always had, which is I've always directed my own career so that I had options. I never wanted to be into a position where I didn't have options. If I began to not like what I was doing, or not be happy where I was, or I didn't feel like sort of concerns were being addressed, I always wanted to be credentialed, and I always wanted to have the education and the experience and the publications record and the contacts where I could go and do something else. I never wanted to be trapped into a situation. So that, that's my advice. And part of doing that is my second piece of advice is, our scientific organizations are so important for that aspect and for that very reason, because you meet and you link up with so many different people, and you need those networks now more than ever for your own success and for your own career, because what you're doing today, whatever first job you go into, it will not be the job that you have in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. And you should always look for new opportunities and keep new opportunities on the horizon, because that's the way you keep your science and your interest in science fresh too. Because you need to stimulate new ideas and new innovations and new thoughts, but keeping your organization, and so scientific organizations do that. They allow you to not only make contacts and maintain contacts and a network of people, but they also allow you to share your ideas with like-minded individuals who stimulate conversations and stimulate ideas about new science and new ways to innovate and to learn about the earth around us. So, I would always recommend that people do things like that. Another thing that I always tell people to do is get some mentors. I mean, my goodness, I have mentors today. Robbie Grease is a great mentor of mine, Scott Tinker, Bill Fisher. Even, my own students, it's like I go to Lorena and ask her advice all the time for stuff. It's like mentors don't have to be sage wisdom, people. They can be your friends or people that are right around you. It's just a network of people that you can ask opinions of and ideas, and that can offer up opportunities. And so, I highly encourage people, you don't have to have one mentor or 5 mentors. It's just surround yourself with a group of people that you can share ideas with, and you can ask advice of, and you can look to for opinions and ideas. So those are probably 3 things that I would encourage people to do.
Oh my God, that's so great. I'm learning a lot from here. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I'm still in the early stage of my career, so I'm learning a lot from you.
I'm sure, Fredrick, you don't get to where you're even involved in this without doing some of those things. So
I was just curious. I was looking through your LinkedIn profile, and I saw that one of your goals is to enjoy life and to
yeah.
be seen by others as someone who enjoys life. And that's really amazing to me. And it brings me to my next question. Like, how do you manage your time and maintain work-life balance to allow you enjoy life?
Well, my wife would tell you that I don't have a work-life balance, but I would tell you that I think I do have a work-life balance. I I think probably one of the more important things with having a work-life balance is having someone that's going to tell you when it's out of balance.
Mm.
And my significant other of 34 years, my wife tells me when things are getting out of balance, and she thinks they're getting out of balance more frequently than I do sometimes, but nevertheless, it's your primary mentor, right? And it's the primary person you should be speaking to. So, you've always got to listen to your family, and you've got to listen to other people and other people's needs, right? So, and then the other thing is, I like to have fun. I mean, life should be about having fun and enjoying life. We're not
And
here for a really long
sorry to
time, right?
cut you short. I hear you play the band at the AAPJ conference.
Yeah,
That's so amazing.
yeah. So, getting to that, I mean, let's see, where do I have? I have my guitar. There's one guitar hanging on the wall right there.
It
Um,
looks really good.
I have several now. I never thought I would have more than one, but I do. And music has always been a huge part of my life. My mom just had a beautiful voice, and she used to sing. And my dad could not carry a tune in a bucket, but he never let it stop him. He was always singing. And so I've always sang from a very young age, and so it's just a very meaningful thing to me. Music is all the way from theater music all the way down to bluegrass and conventional music. And so it's always important to me that I keep playing music, and it balances out what I do. Sometimes I find that, you know, people at meetings, they have no idea that I do science. They only know that I play music, you know. So they're
Oh,
always
that's
asking,
nice.
when are you guys going to play music? And I'm always saying, you know, I'm actually giving a paper tomorrow morning if you'd like to come and hear it.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
that's always been an important point. And then, you know, being able to give over time to those type of things you enjoy doing. Um, and someone called it the other day. Uh, they called it my eulogy resume. I
Mm,
was at a meeting in Washington, and this woman, we were talking about playing music. She said, I looked you up last night online. We were actually having a meeting about graduate students, and it was a forum that was sponsored by Sharon Mosher. And so we were all talking about what are the skills that graduate students need in the future, right? And this lady came back. She was from the University of Georgia the next morning, and she said, I see that you play music. And so I got to talking to her about music. She said, I saw it on your LinkedIn profile, and she called it my eulogy resume. She said, and I thought that was an interesting comment, because it's like, you know, what she's referring to is, what are the things that you want people to talk about you know, when
mm,
they eulogize you, it's upon your death or something. And she's right. You know, few people will say, oh, she published, you know, 500 papers in her lifetime, and she, you know, and she taught all these classes, and she did that. But, you know, you want them to say that you were a person that enjoyed life, and you were a person that loved music, and you owned a pig, and, you know, you loved your pig, and, you know, and you generally were enjoyed by the people around you. And so that's your eulogy resume, and
mm.
that's what you really work on in your spare time.
That's so nice because I feel like being in research academia, you need to have hobbies so you don't get swamped to doing research. You need to have other things that can take your time away, and then you can actually maintain that work-life balance. That's so interesting. I'm glad to know you play music. I'm excited
Yeah,
about that.
you play music?
Yeah, I don't play music. I play sports.
Well, see, my wife plays sports. She's an Ironman
Uh,
triathlete, and you know,
okay.
I really didn't want to do that, so I decided to turn to music. So,
Oh, that's nice. So I'm just gonna say, what skills has been essential for you in your job, like being in research, being in academia, and being in the industry? What skill has been so essential for you, and what are some of the skills you think are foundational for all geoscientists?
um, I think one of the things that's been foundational for me, and it's not a skill, it's just a personality trait. I think having a sense of humor is really, really important. I think it's important. I use humor a lot to diffuse conflict, and to give talks, and to talk to people about
That's a
things.
great skill there. That's a great skill.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes very difficult situations can be diffused quite a bit, you know, with humor. It shouldn't take away the seriousness of the situation, but so I use humor as a skill set a lot. Um, everyone needs a strong, you know, geoscience foundational background to do science, and you need, you know, you need good qualities of abstract. Really, you
Mhm.
need to be able to abstract information out of like huge bodies of data. We're just bombarded these days with huge volumes of data, you know, and all types of data. And it's like one of the skills that I think in the future that students really, really need to hone is the ability to abstract pertinent information and quality information out of a larger body of data and information. Communication skills are critical, you know, and so giving talks and being able to use humor and being able to use you know, being able to concisely convey your ideas and stuff are really critical. If you ask employers, and if you ask people in government and people in academics, and you know, what are the most important skills, just like you did to me, they are going to come back and say soft skills. They're going to say your ability to manage conflict, your ability to understand personalities and team member personalities, your ability to communicate, your ability to write, you know. And for me, it's been, you know, my ability to utilize humor and communication in order to convey scientific ideas. The other important skill that we really need to be able to hone as our populations are growing and we're trying to reach out to different cultures and different socioeconomic levels, and then, you know, sort of engage them in the scientific process, is you need to be able to explain what you're doing to a 7-year-old and to a 70-year-old. You know, you need to be able to explain what you're doing to that range of people so that you can reach a larger population than just the people who have the office right next to you.
That's amazing. Thanks for that. So I was just going to ask, success and fulfillment, are they interchangeable? Given the context of your experience, what do you have to say about that? Success and fulfillment. Do you think they're interchangeable?
I think success and fulfillment can exist side by side, you know, but I do think they're different things. I think you can be successful at what you're doing, but it's not a very fulfilling task, right?
Oh yeah.
Your fulfillment is a function of, you know, how success makes you feel. And so, you know, I'll give you an example. You know, sometimes I can, you know, I can tell, well, you know, I don't do layoffs, but I'll tell you, you know, sometimes you can have success and you can successfully convey to people that, you know, their opportunities lie in other places, that they're, you know, maybe they need to rethink whether you know, maybe there's not the right time in their life to do a PhD. Maybe they need to think about their path and think about where their path is taking them and what they're doing. And, you know, and I can convey that and do that successfully. Sometimes that's not really fulfilling. You know, those are difficult conversations. And so there's difficult things that need to be done. But you know, you can be fulfilled with the understanding that you did things in a gracious way, you communicated, and you criticized, for instance, in a constructive way. And that can be very fulfilling, that you feel like you've done that better than a lot of people could have done it. But I don't necessarily think that success and fulfillment have to exist side by side. I mean, have to exist as the same thing. I think they can exist side by side. But I think that if you're successful at what you do in life, and you know, you show success in tasks and things that you do in publications, then you will end with a sense of fulfillment in what you've done.
That's nice. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. I was just going to ask, what creative ways do you transfer knowledge through?
What crazy ways do I transfer knowledge?
What creative ways do you transfer knowledge? Like, what's some of the creative ways you transfer knowledge through?
Some of the creative ways that I transfer knowledge. Well, I think that a lot of times I use things that are in my own personal life to illustrate stuff and illustrate processes. I have, like I said, I have a pig, and so a lot of times I'll use my pig to talk about hogbacks. You know, we talk about hogback structures in sophomore geology, and I'll use examples of different types of pigs to talk about different hogbacks. You know, so this is one of those things I try to do to interest people. One of the more interesting lectures I think that the students like in my sophomore class is we talk about radioactivity, and I have this long discussion about Godzilla. And because basically Godzilla, you know, I don't know if people know this, but I ask my students, I'll say, well, why doesn't Godzilla radioactively decay? You know, I mean, he would radioactively decay. And I thought, I didn't even know the answer to that. And I looked it up, and it's like, apparently Godzilla has a plasma generator. There's a theory or hypothesis that Godzilla has a plasma generator in his stomach, and he continually generates new radioactivity. And so we go through these discussions, and I use some of these as examples as to try to teach sort of simple concepts of radioactivity and decay and stuff. So I think I have a broad interest in a lot of different things, and I try to bring those into my lecture to make them more interesting.
I think that's a really creative way of transferring knowledge, because I feel like you can even tell that to a kid. You don't have to, you can transfer knowledge to anybody just using very creative and very simple ways to like transfer knowledge. I think that's really amazing.
Plus, you know, people don't, you know, I mean, it's like people walk away with a knowledge of radioactivity and a knowledge of how Godzilla generates radioactivity, things that they would never think of, right? Another thing that we do in one of my classes is I have them look at movies and then I have them go through and critique these movies and say, based upon the science that they've learned over the semester, what's reasonable in this movie and what's unreasonable. There's some amazing, The Behemoth. I mean, there's some amazing movies out there that, deal with scientific ideas and geoscience ideas, but, they're totally twisted with cowboys fighting dinosaurs and various things. So I think it just makes people look critically at media and stuff, and makes them think about, what's real and what's a little bit of a stretch. So.
That's really nice. So I was just gonna say, given having said that, I was just wondering what are some of the how can we actually improve better direct geoscience outreach efforts?
How can we improve direct geoscience outreach efforts? Well, if you're going to reach the young audience, well, and now I'm going to say young is less than 30 years old. So to reach the young audience, you've got to get engaged online with the media. I mean, and it's not even a matter of, I remember having this conversation, a few months back with an organization that said, we've got to get a Facebook page going because we've got to reach these young people. And I was like, that most students aren't even on Facebook anymore. They've gone to Instagram and they've gone to TikTok and they've gone to other things. So I said, unless you want to produce, a 90-second dance routine to some, geologic orogeny or something, then, you're not going to probably reach them on Facebook. So we've kind of got to get more younger people involved in these concepts of how we reach out to some of our younger members and build our younger membership, because you are the future of these organizations and they're the future of science. I think that, it's interesting. I watch Neil deGrasse Tyson, and the following that he has and what he's done for astrophysics and what he's done for space. And he's an amazing individual, but he's done that through popular conversations and being able to bring his science to, like I said, those 70-year-olds to 7-year-olds, we had an individual in our science, Stephen Gould. And Stephen Gould, used to give these amazing lectures that reached everyone from 70 to 7, dealing with dinosaurs and evolution and Darwin. And he passed away several years ago. And I really feel like, we are still, as a science, searching for those representative individuals who can reach out to the general community and touch the general community on their own space, not on the basis of where we think they should be, but, in their own homes and on their own space, about different important topics. So I think we're still searching as a community for those individuals to step up.
That's nice. Amazing to know that.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, what impact has
you could be that person, Fredrick. You could be that Tyson of geosciences, man. So
I'll step up and see how I can play a role in that aspect. Geoscience. So I was just gonna say, like, what do you think? What impact has geoscience research, geoscience practice made to ensure human sustainability, and what resources should we capitalize to probably reach that?
say that again. What impact has it had on what?
Yeah, what impact has geoscience research and practice made on human sustainability?
Yeah, I'm not understanding that. You're cutting out on me at the very end of that question, Fred.
Okay, I was just saying, what impact has geoscience practice and research made on human sustainability?
Human sustainability. I think that, everyone, it's been very interesting for me to watch the numbers of students and people that are going into geoscience, because I've been watching them go down in a lot of programs. And it's so ironic because, we're entering a time when geoscience is so critical. I mean, to really understand the response of geomorphic and sedimentary systems, as well as biotic systems, to changes in climate, changes in the environment, anthropogenic changes. And, we need geoscientists. I mean, we need paleontologists and we need palynologists, people studying plants and pollen, and we need geomorphologists. We cannot set up a landing site on the moon without lunar geomorphologists who understand what's going to happen when we actually try to set structures and put stuff up on the moon. You know, we can't begin to set up wind farms in offshore areas unless we have shelf sedimentologists and marine geologists and geomorphologists who can help us understand what's going to be the impact of hurricanes like Ivan and Sandy and you know, these big hurricanes that are coming ashore, and how that's going to adversely affect how we structure our communications cables, our energy cables, things like that. You know, we need geoscientists to understand, you know, water, and how our hydrologists and geoscientists and sedimentologists to understand how our river systems are going to react to these changes in climate, to these huge, you know, massive fires and burns that we get that sort of destroy the microbial elements of the soil or the micro soil structures, and allow these mass transport deposits to happen in subaerial and submarine environments, right? And so there's so much today that we've contributed so much to the world in terms of energy, and energy is so tightly linked to economic growth and sustainability, right? And we've always done that, but now I think that we need to turn our attentions towards, you know, how are we going to address some of the anthropogenic and also climatic and some of the problems that are going to exist, you know, in the next 50 years as we try to transition how we produce energy, so towards new energies and things. So we have such a critical role to play in how society sustains itself during times of change. And I think that, you know, young students and younger people are selling themselves short if they think that there's no need for geoscientists in the earth and in today. You know, we have one of the largest space resource programs in the world at Colorado School of Mines, and you know, I work pretty closely with those guys, both because they're talking about how are they going to mine material on the moon to create water and hydrogen and fuel, you know, and mine from the material on the moon. And they don't even understand, you know, what angle can they put their conveyor belts on the moon so that the material doesn't just roll off into space. And so it's just sediment movement, and we need to be contributing to those discussions, right? I'll just say one
That's amazing.
thing. We strongly need to be contributing to establishing the difference between opinion and knowledge, right? Today on the internet, and our decision makers and our politicians are so bombarded with opinions that they oftentimes just make decisions on the basis of opinions, general opinions and just general ideas, and they never really dig down into what is the true knowledge that we have on these scientific subjects. And so we have a responsibility as geoscientists to go and to convey, you know, the knowledge that we have of things to decision makers and to help them in that process.
That's really amazing. Now, talking about the number of geoscience students going down, like you say, every year you see less students going into geoscience, but then considering the challenge in getting job opportunities in geoscience, why should one actually even look into a career in geoscience?
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, I think that's the thing. There's this perception that the softening in the energy industry has led to some of these drops, you know? And but you know, some of these drops were happening before the energy industry softened up. I know because I've looked at the numbers. I think that what the energy industry is doing is trying to consolidate using technology. And so, you know, Exxon, for example, went from 1,200 geoscientists back in the probably the 80s to 200 today. And so those are huge precipitous drops in the way people are employing people and using people. The other thing that I don't think that we've done a really good job with is giving young people roadmaps for how they access industry, how they access occupations and jobs in other industries. You know, we say, oh, go into geothermal or go into carbon sequestration or, you know, go into geohazards or go into hydrogen or, you know, but that's really hard to do. You know, the jobs are dispersed with small companies as opposed to large conglomerate companies.
Yep.
And so I realize that's really hard to do. And I've been talking with Rick Fritz, and I've been talking with some people at AAPG about, you know, how do we establish these roadmaps for how people actually go into and access and train for these type of positions. At School of Mines, we're rejiggering our curriculum to sort of address some of those needs. Zane Job is teaching data science classes and data analytics classes, and a lot of those classes are online so that people from industry can boost their skills and build their skill set so they can go into some of these data analytics and data analysis jobs. The same thing with carbon sequestration. We rejiggered our curriculum so that now we sort of are taking some of our curriculum and how you look at reservoirs and how you produce hydrocarbons and produce fluids out of reservoirs to sort of reverse engineer those thoughts so that you can put, you can put carbon and put types of fluids back in those reservoirs and not have them go anywhere. It's like nobody wants to go anywhere, So it's just sort of rethinking how your curriculum is to provide students some better roadmaps, some better classes sort of to access these jobs in the future.
Yeah, I think I truly agree with that, because like the world is changing here, and the curriculum can't be static. It has to change to accommodate what's happening in the world. I think I totally agree with that.
Totally
So
agree.
given this, what advice will you give young professionals, young scientists? What do you think they should be doing to actually improve their career prospects?
Well, I'll go back to networking. That's just a given. It's a foundational thing that they need to network with organizations, because you need to spread a broader net, right? They need to work with professors that are concerned not just with a scientific problem, but work with professors that have a history of putting students in jobs. It's like, because I know, some professors are more interested in having one or two students and sort of doing that niche thing that they do. But from my own perspective, and I know the perspective of some of my colleagues, we feel like our job is, and I always ask this in job interviews, I'll ask new job interviewees in the university, where do you see your students working and being employed? Because frankly, that's our job. I think that's our job, is to make sure that our students have employment whenever they get out. So students need to work with professors that have a reputation and have a history of putting students in jobs. They need to work with professors, especially professors my age, and I'll tell you, I'm 59 and a half, so I'm fixing to be 60 in January. They need to try, and I'm not the best role model for this. There are other people that are good at this, but they need to work with professors that have a history of not being afraid to reinvent themselves in certain directions, as opposed to being entrenched in some of their historical directions and stuff. I'll give myself as an example. I've recently started working with our mining and minerals people, because the mining and minerals organizations and the mining and minerals companies, they are absolutely desperate for sedimentologists, geologists, people who understand geomechanics and structure. And there are a lot of my students that have gone into working with lithium companies to try to find sedimentary lithium, working with gold and precious minerals and rare earth element companies to try to understand how fractures influence fluid movement within rocks and how that improves emplacement of minerals. And from my perspective as an academic scientist, those companies have some of the most massive data sets in the world. I mean, they'll go out into an area and they'll collect 5,000 meters of core all through a deposit, and we just don't do that. And we collect core very specific for tasks, right? So from my perspective, there's great advantage to go out and try to look at carbonate seamounts, out in the Western US, where there's a huge amount of data and someone's sort of mine these underground tunnels through this whole thing. So I can fly a drone through an underground tunnel and take an image of a mass transport deposit that I could never get, from data that I have in the energy industry. So there's a synergy, and there's a collateral working opportunity there between those types, mining and minerals and sort of energy that we've not done before. Same with geothermal and, geomechanics and fracturing and stuff. So look for those types of professors who are sort of reaching into those new sciences and those new ideas and those new directions as mentors and people that you want to work with, right? So that's a couple of pieces of advice that I would give students.
Oh, that's a really good one. Thanks for sharing that, because most students are most young professionals and even graduate students are still, how do I apply my research? What do I do when I'm done with school? Where do I go to?
Yeah, yeah. You need to work with professors that have a history of sort of getting that they think that their job is a big part of their job is to make sure that their students are employed whenever they get out.
That's nice. I was just going to say, in your opinion, how do you think the geoscience industry has changed? And what do you see, what areas do you see the geoscience industry or research going to in the near future?
Um, I think geoscience, there's no doubt that high carbon to low carbon energy transition is happening. It's a transition though. It's going to happen over the next 50 years or more. I mean, Scott Tinker has been talking about this for a long time, right? Switch was not going to be an on-off switch.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, did I
Right?
lose you?
It was going to be a slow, it's almost like putting putting a switch on your flip that you don't just flip a switch, you sort of dim the lights, right? And so that's kind of what energy transition is going to be. It's going to be a dimming of high carbon energy and a maximizing up of lower carbon energy. And so we need to recognize that, and students need to recognize that, and they need to plan accordingly. People are going to companies are moving into carbon sequestration because there's money to be made in carbon sequestration. And we are recognizing that, because of the world's insatiable drive for energy, and we do. I mean, look, we have $5 a gallon oil or $5 a gallon gasoline now in the US, and there's not a single person that's not in their car. I mean, everybody's using their automobile the same way they always were, right? And so, our concept that, higher prices are going to drive, sort of a decrease in conventional energy is not the same. But companies are recognizing that we're going to need to sequester carbon if we're going to be able to get a handle on greenhouse gases and greenhouse warming, right? And so companies are moving in that direction because there's money to be made in that direction. Things like critical minerals, industries are moving towards critical minerals. I mean, BHP is an oil and gas energy company, but it's mainly dominantly 95% of BHP is a minerals company globally. And so they have mixed interests, And so we need to recognize, and now what I find is that, BHP is actually merging with Woodside this week. And a lot of my
This week.
guys in BHP that are really good energy geoscientists decided the company that's the mineral company, and they're plucking those people out and they're putting them into minerals, and they want them to study minerals because, like I said, they need all these people to look at the sedimentology and the geomechanics of mineral deposits, right? So what that's saying is your career is going to be sort of a mashup, of a lot of different things, and you need to be able to take your skill set and see how you can apply your existing skill set to new ideas and new technologies and new approaches. You need to be able to see how you can apply your understanding of, you got a master's degree in volcanic rocks, and you need to see how you could apply your understanding of volcanic rocks and strength to someone that wants to build a facility on the moon. So you need to be able to see the broader implications of your education and your science than just the job that's right in front of you, because jobs are changing within companies and jobs are changing, outside of companies to be much broader.
That's amazing. So students and early professionals, we need to adapt to the changes.
Yeah, adapt to the
Find
change.
application, find applications to what you have studied.
Yeah,
Not just
exactly.
looking for the conventional jobs and things. You need to look out for new opportunities and things like that. That's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was just saying, given the broad geoscience, given the broad application of geoscience, what area of geoscience application do you think is being undermined? That you think there's opportunity, there's young professionals to look out for this area, students to look out for this area. There's a lot that can come from this area. Currently, not a lot is coming out from there.
There's two things I'm going to say about that. One, I'm just going to give a shout out to biostratigraphy.
Oh,
And
okay.
it doesn't mean that there's going to be some huge explosion in jobs in biostratigraphy. But I will say that there are going to be niche opportunities in biostratigraphy because companies are now recognizing that they actually did use their biostratigraphers and their paleontologists and their palynologists. And so, you know, one of the sciences that's kind of, you know, really sort of collapsing, has been collapsing in on itself is the study of pollen and, you know, ancient pollen and systems. And so palynology and biostratigraphy. I do find that companies now are actually going out and hiring biostratigraphers to come into the company. These are energy companies, right? And so there's a little bit of opportunity there. But at the and you know at the same time, there's no doubt that just the nature of the fact that we've been doing geoscience and we've been doing science for hundreds of years means that there's a lot of data out there. Huge volumes of data. And one of the problems that companies have today is they don't know what to do with the data. And because they don't know what they want to do with the data, they have difficulties defining the value proposition of that data. And so, and it's only the value proposition in companies that are going to drive processes to sort of generate and utilize data. So I think the role of geodata scientists is to have a basic background in geoscience so that you can actually look at that data within companies and parse the value of that data. Like I said early on, you know, we're almost overwhelmed with data these days. We need to be able to abstract out what's important and what's not important, right? And so the only way companies are going to sort of establish a value proposition of all this data that exists out there in the world and what we have, and we collect huge, and now our technologies enable us to go in and collect, you know, drone clouds of data that have millions of data points. And you know, we were always concerned with having too much data to do reservoir models. Well, now, guess what? You know, now you're overwhelmed with the amount of data. And so I think the area, and so what this is leading to is saying that I think the area of data and data science and data analytics has just evolved, you know, importantly for a reason. It's evolved because companies are just, lots of companies, you know, whether that's environmental companies or, you know, or governments or, you know, they're just overwhelmed with the amount of data that they have. So, but the thing that needs to come along with is not just how the mechanics of how you use and manipulate data, but some background and foundational science so that you can understand how to interpret that data and what's the meaning of that data and how do you bring that data to bear most constructively on scientific problems, right? Because otherwise you're just like moving a bunch of data around, and as Pete Rose would tell us, you can have too much data. You know, there's a lot of data that you don't need. And so, you know, I think it's important to understand, you know, sensitivities and the implications of data and how you utilize that data to answer scientific problems, most importantly. And so, you know, go to a program and get some background in you know, computer programming, get some background in data analytics, but get it within a context of individuals who know in the geosciences and in the sciences how to utilize that data. So it's important to have professors that show examples of sort of, you don't just teach data analytics, but they actually use that data to answer scientific problems.
That's amazing. So that brings me to my next question, which is really amazing. Knowing the fact that the companies have huge amount of data, there's a lot of data in the industry, like you said, they have collected so many data. But how do you bridge this gap between the industry and academia?
I think the first thing you have to do to bridge gaps between industry and academia is have academics that want to work with applied industry. And so you have a lot of academic individuals that they just want to do science, and they're really interested in basic science. So these are basic science and applied science, right? And so, but I think even the funding agencies these days, like National Science Foundation and, you know, Department of Energy has always been very applied, and but excuse me, NOAA, organizations like that, they're all moving pretty exorbitantly towards you know, funding projects and funding research that has an applied approach, even things that can be monetized and sort of, you know, and so that's just the nature of science and where it's going. So you have to find individuals that like to work in that arena. They like to work with companies in how they actually apply their observations and how they use those to answer scientific problems. And so that's the first thing with bridging academia and industry, is finding the right people that, I used to have a friend of mine that said, or Bill Fisher, a friend of mine, said, publish where people want to read your publications. And and I would say, also work with people that want to work with you, is something that he used to tell me. And I agree with both of those sentiments. And Bill knows, Dr. Fisher knows better than anybody. Publish where people want to read what you're publishing, and work with people that want to work with you. And so if you want to be engaged with industry, and this is why I always ask this question of people who are interviewing for jobs, it's like, where are your students going to be employed? Well, if you think you want to work in the space resources industry, then work with professors who are working with the space resources industry. If you think you want to work with people who are engaged in the energy industry, then work with those professors. And any professor like that that's worth their salt is going to ask you, what are you bringing to the table? I'm going to ask people, what are you bringing? I don't even need you to bring funding to the table, for instance, but I need you to have shown a propensity to want to challenge yourself to fund your research and your work. That means, have you applied to any grants? Have you even applied to any undergraduate grants, such as the LL Weeks? It's provided by AAPG. I mean, it's only it's $500, but $500 is $500. I've got students come to me and they've won grants before for $300 to study mud volcanoes on Mars. And I'm like, you're not going to like build a mission to Mars on $300, but it shows a propensity to bring something to the table, right? It shows that you want people to know what you're doing, and you want to be out there and have people interested in what you're doing. And that's what professors who are engaged in practical application of their research want, right? They want to see people that want to work with applied, with an applied mission for science.
That's amazing. Thanks for that. They're not just doing basic science, doing something that can be applied somewhere.
Yeah, basic science is the foundation of applied science for sure. But I would say I've done some basic science. It's like, I've studied deltas on Mars. That's pretty basic. I mean, we're not going to go out and live along the margins of the Everswald Delta on Mars. But so I definitely study things for my own curiosity. But at the same time, I have a mix of things that I do that are very applied, because that's where funding comes from, and that's where face it, students need funding and they need jobs, and that's my job, is to always try to provide you guys support, provide students support, and at the end of the process to have you gainfully employed in some direction that you want to go in. And so work with professors that that can do that.
That's amazing. Thanks for that. So, looking at the future trajectory of geosciences, which area do you want to be working on? What area do you specifically want to be working on? Looking at the future trajectory of geoscience.
I'm probably going to spend. Well, I'm doing it right now, actually. We've sort of have a big project working in carbonates, and that's sort of shocking, because I've always worked in clastic systems, and I always tell my carbonate friends that carbonates, the only carbonates I see are ones that are growing as coral heads, right? That once they break off and they start moving, across the seafloor, then they're clastics. I call them carboclastic. And so, but they do move in different ways, and they do, resediment themselves in different ways. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm still working with physical clastic processes, but I'm working with carbonate material. And so, we've always done a lot of research in siliciclastic mass transport deposits. Sands and muds and these mass transport deposits down the ocean. And so now we're beginning to move to look at carbonate mass transport deposits, things that are happening off of reefs, things that are happening off of carbonate seamounts, in deep ocean areas. And how do those fracture, and how do they emplace themselves differently than siliciclastic mass failures? And so that's always been a great interest of mine. And now it's a really big interest in in the oil and gas industry, because there's a lot of discoveries and sort of, these isolated seamounts in the Eastern Mediterranean and, offshore Guyana and Suriname, and sort of, we've always produced these, different types of carbonate platforms and stuff, in the Permian Basin and in the areas of Kazakhstan and stuff. So I've been doing some of that, and I'm going to keep doing that. I've always been interested in seafloor mass failures, and so I'm becoming more interested in trying to understand how we engineer marine areas so that we can accommodate them for the changes that we see happening in shelfal and deep ocean marine systems, changes that we see happening due to changes in climate, changes in population and usage of organization stuff. So I've been teaching pulling together and sort of teaching a little short course in how to engineer shelf systems, meaning, how do we deal with these big hurricanes that are coming on shore that are sort of destroying, rigs and destroying pipelines and destroying, you're going to get sea currents and erosions and things sort of, some of these companies in the North Sea have paid upwards of $500 million just to deal with cables that rub against one another in the ocean floor due to currents and sort of, dissociate. So I'm interested in sort of those impacts and how they're going to impact the geomorphic systems and the built world around us. And then finally, I'm continuing to work with the guys and do some stuff in planetary geology, because there's no doubt that by 2024, 2026, these guys are, going to the moon. The Artemis mission, they've got people, they're trying to train astronauts running around in geosciences, and they're going to the moon, and they're going to build structures on the moon, and they're going to mine things on the moon that we are running out of here, that we need from the moon to further exploration out into space. And so we're going to need geoscientists, and we're going to need people that have an understanding of, of how to identify different types of rocks and how those rocks are going to abrade, and how they're going to behave in environments like the moon and Mars and different places. So I'm still interested in Titan. Titan has these huge lakes of methane on them, and so and they've got these really cool sort of deltas and sort of things that river systems that run into the margins of these lakes, and it's like, how does methane actually flow into a lake of methane? And because we never think about that. It's like, we don't have methane river systems here on Earth, but on other planets, geomorphic systems are evolving because of flowing methane, and we think about going out and looking for life on other planets, and we're looking for carbon-based life, right? But the reality is, they may not be carbon-based life on other planets. It may be, methane-based life or something, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of really cool and interesting things that are being done, pushing the envelope of looking at other worlds here and also in our oceans, and understanding how changes that are happening on our planet are going to affect people living around the margins of the oceans, and how they're going to affect our own lived and built systems.
That's amazing. I'm also super interested in the planetary science, planetary geology, going to study other planets, because I feel like that's the way to go, because like a lot of work is being done to understand what's happening in the moon, different types of rock, and I think we don't know a lot about that, and I think that's a good way to look at it.
So, you talk about students, but, if you want to be, if you want to be involved in that, I mean, there are programs, just like the program at Colorado School of Mines, there's programs over in Australia, and they are, producing students, and those students are getting jobs. I mean, I teach planetary geology here, and I teach the class in the summer online, and I was amazed at the people who were in that class from all over the globe and what they did. I had one guy in that class, I'll just tell you this, John Sangri is a very famous sort of geoscientist. He worked with Exxon, and he helped develop some of the ideas of sequence stratigraphy and published some of the seminal papers in sequence stratigraphy. And last year I had a guy in my class, his name was John Sangri. And I asked him in my planetary class, and I said, he was young, and I said, he was from Houston. And I said, John, do you have a grandfather, with your same name? And he said, oh yeah. He said, that was my grandfather. And
Oh my God.
I said, what do you do now, John? And he said, he said, well, I teach people how to drive the space station. And I was
Oh my
like,
God.
that's amazing. You don't think about that. You don't think about how people, you have to teach somebody. It's not like it's got a stick shift, you know, or like, you know, it's not an automatic, it's an automatic for sure. But someone has to teach people how to drive the space station. And this guy, whose grandfather was one of the seminal and premier geoscientists of his time, this guy's grandfather was a geoscientist, and now this guy is taking planetary geology because he's engaged in planetary sciences and stuff, and he's teaching people how to drive the space station, and he hopes to get up on some of the planets, you know, and teach people how to drive, you know, different things
That's
on these.
amazing. That's amazing. Oh my God. That's so
Yeah,
nice.
the world is really an oyster that's opening up for people, for you guys to do whatever you want to do. Just find the right people to mentor you and help get you there.
Thanks for this advice. It's really grateful. I think I'm learning so much from this interview, to be honest. And Leslie, lastly, just before I let you go, thank you so much for your time. I was just going to say, reflecting on your passion for your discipline, geoscience, do you think, from experience, loving what you do comes with time?
Um, I think I will echo the sentiments of you know, my colleague Henry Puzzamentier, my friend Henry Puzzamentier. Henry always said the person who sees the most rocks wins, you know, and I think that's why, you know, field work is important to give people a perspective on where they are in the world and how they uh, you know, the role that they play in a larger world, you know. I was just giving a talk yesterday, and I was showing people a picture of the very first map. They think it was the very first map, and it was from like Babylonia, and it was just a little clay tablet. It was about the size of an iPhone, and it was just very generic in its construct. But they believe that it wasn't. I mean, you weren't going to take that map and figure out how to get to somewhere. It was just a map to give people a sense, a snapshot. It was like the Google Earth of its time. It was to give people a sense of the snapshot of where they are in the world, you know. And so I think that, you know, people who study geoscience always sort of have a perspective of where they're at in the world. And now I've forgotten your questions.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, reflecting on your passion for your discipline, which is geoscience, do you think loving what you do comes with time?
Oh, with time, yeah. So that's where I was going with this. Was I think that loving what you're doing, you know, one thing, it originates from wanting to understand the world around you and want to understand your sense of where you're at in the world. That's how I got to the map in Babylonia. But I do think that the more rocks you see, the more you have a better understanding of how your small postage stamp of the world fits within a larger context, right? And so I think that the thing that time has given me is it's given me that larger perspective. I'm able
Yeah.
to look at the Turonian, for instance, out in the Western Interior Cretaceous, and I'm able to think about the Turonian that I saw over in Morocco, or the Turonian that I saw or looked at in a basin over in Australia or something, you know? So it gives me that little bit broader perspective of stuff. The one thing that I think that time tends to do with some people is it tends to make you more pessimistic, you know.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as you age, you either grow more pessimistic about new ideas and where you're going, or you see more things in the world and you begin to open up and recognize that where your place in the world, but be able to make those linkages between different ideas and different people and different things, right? And so my hope for geoscience and for people who are doing geoscience is that you're already in geoscience because you have a propensity to want to understand your place in a larger universe, in a larger world, right? And so keep hold of that dream and that vision, because what you're going to do is you're going to work in different basins, you're going to meet different people, you're going to read different books, you're going to read different papers, and by the time you're 40 years old, you're going to be able to make linkages between things that you didn't know about, you know, when you were 30. By the time you're 50 years old, you're going to be able to make more linkages. So you're really building a neural network of global science, right? And you're building your own neural network of global science that enables you to and that's what enables you as you get older, I think, to create some larger linkages that we see to innovate and to create some larger linkages that you see in sciences that I couldn't do when I was in my 20s, because I was only worked a couple of different areas. But the one thing, as I said, that you want to do that young people have that a lot of times, older geoscientists don't have is they have an optimism for what they can bring to the party and what they can bring to a discussion, and I think that's very, very important. So I think there's advantages on both ends of the spectrum, and individuals that can bring those advantages along with them as they age and get older, along with that journey that they've seen so many different things. Those are the people that, as you get to my age, that are going to be able to think in more innovative and sort of in broader ways.
Thank you so much. That's so amazing. Thank you, Leslie. This is we've come to the end of the interview, and I'm so happy to have spoken with you today. It's my pleasure to talk to you. I learned so much just from this interview. In fact, I was taking notes while you were talking, to be honest.
Well,
um,
yeah, professors and people who are 50 or more have a lot of opinions, but I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and us having this visit back and forth and stuff. We should visit more like this. So drop by
yeah,
when you come to Colorado, okay?
I do, I definitely do. Thank you so much. And that's the end of the interview, stroke talk with the SEPM 2022 honorary membership member winner. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Thanks a lot. We'll
And
talk to you later, Fredrick.
yes,
Bye-bye.
touch base. Thank you.